There is something about the future that the 1960s promised us that still captures the imagination. The flying cars, the robot servants, the cities on the moon. And if someone grew up during that decade, they remember exactly what the year 2000 was supposed to look like. This was an era when the future felt inevitable. The space race was proving that anything humanity could dream, it could achieve. Technology was advancing at breathtaking speed. Scientists, artists, and visionaries were painting pictures of tomorrow that seemed just around the corner. This was the decade that gave us the World's Fair, the Jetsons, futuristic architecture that looked like it belonged on another planet, and a genuine belief that by the turn of the century, we would all be living in a technological paradise. The optimism was extraordinary, the predictions were bold, and the vision of tomorrow said everything about the hopes and anxieties of the present. Let's walk through what people in the 1960s actually believed the future would hold. Some of these predictions came true in ways nobody expected. Some remain stubbornly unfulfilled, and some reveal how different the world looked from that moment of unprecedented optimism. Let's step into that world. The 1964 New York World's Fair was where the future came to life. Millions of Americans walked through exhibits that promised a world transformed by technology. General Motors presented Futurama 2, a massive exhibit where visitors rode through a model of the world in 2024. They saw cities under the ocean, colonies on the moon, and highways cutting through jungles cleared by laser beams. The future was clean, orderly, and spectacular. IBM showcased computers that would change how humans worked and thought. Bell Telephone demonstrated the picture phone, letting fairgoers see who they were talking to on a screen. This seemed like pure science fiction, yet here it was working. The prediction was that within a decade, everyone would have one. General Electric presented a kitchen of tomorrow where appliances responded to voice commands and meals prepared themselves. These exhibits were not presented as fantasy, they were presented as certainty. The engineers and scientists who designed them genuinely believed they were showing visitors their own future. The only question was how quickly it would arrive. Television brought these visions into every living room. The Jetsons premiered in 1962 and became the definitive image of tomorrow. George Jetson commuted to work in a flying car that folded into a briefcase. His wife, Jane, had a robot maid named Rosie who handled all household chores. The family lived in a skypad apartment building above the clouds. Everything was automated, push-button, effortless. The show was meant as comedy, but its vision was taken seriously. Flying cars seemed inevitable. Robots doing housework seemed like a matter of years, not decades. The idea that people would work only a few hours a week because machines would handle everything else seemed like obvious progress. Why would the future be any different? Space dominated how the 1960s imagined tomorrow. The moon landing in 1969 proved that the impossible was possible. If humanity could reach the moon in less than a decade after setting the goal, what could possibly stop us? Space stations seemed like obvious next steps. Lunar colonies were discussed as practical engineering projects, not dreams. Mars missions were planned for the 1980s. Popular science magazines showed illustrations of families vacationing on the moon, hotels in orbit, cities under domes on Mars. The universe was opening up, and humanity would spread across it within a generation. Children born in 1960 fully expected to see space as a normal destination in their lifetimes. The optimism was based on extrapolating the rate of progress. If we went from the Wright brothers to Apollo 11 in 66 years, imagine another 66 years. Before we continue with the homes and cities of the future that the 1960s imagined, if you are enjoying this look at how past generations dreamed of tomorrow and want to explore more decades and ideas, consider subscribing. There are so many more stories about how people imagined and built the world we know today. The home of the future was a favorite subject of magazines, television specials, and World's Fair exhibits. The 1960s version featured walls made of glass, rooms that could be reconfigured at the push of a button, and technology integrated into every surface. Appliances would anticipate needs. The refrigerator would track what you ate and automatically order more. The stove would cook meals to perfection without supervision. Climate control would be precise. Each room would maintain its ideal temperature. Some visionaries predicted we would control the weather itself, ending storms and droughts forever. Disease would be conquered through medical technology. Pills would replace meals for those too busy to eat. Clothing would be disposable, made from cheap synthetic materials and thrown away after wearing. The architecture of the 1960s future was distinctive. Googie style had already brought futuristic design to restaurants and gas stations across America, with sweeping roof lines, starburst, and boomerang shapes. The future city would extend this aesthetic to everything. Buildings would be organic and curved, nothing like the boxy structures of the past. Homes would look like they belonged on another planet. Buckminster Fuller geodesic domes promised efficient structures that could house entire cities. Some futurists predicted we would live under massive domes that controlled climate and protected us from the elements. Cities themselves would be covered, creating perpetual, perfect weather regardless of geography. Transportation in the 1960s, vision of the future was dominated by one image: the fleeing car. This was not considered fanciful, it was considered inevitable. General Motors, Ford, and independent inventors were all working on personal aircraft. The technology existed, it was simply a matter of making it affordable and practical. By the year 2000, surely everyone would have one. Ground transportation would run on monorails and moving sidewalks. Disneyland's monorail, which opened in 1959, was presented as a preview of urban transit. Cities would have networks of sleek, elevated trains running silently above streets. The automobile as we knew it would become obsolete, replaced by automated vehicles that drove themselves along electronic highways. Supersonic air travel would make the world small. The Concorde was already in development. Futurists predicted we would travel from New York to Tokyo in 2 hours. Some predicted hypersonic aircraft that could reach any destination on Earth in under an hour. International travel would become as casual as driving to the next town. The workplace of the future would be transformed by computers and automation. Repetitive labor would be handled by machines. Human workers would oversee automated systems, make creative decisions, and enjoy unprecedented leisure time. The 4-hour workday was widely predicted. The 3-day weekend seemed certain. Nuclear power promised unlimited clean energy. Atomic reactors would power everything from cars to appliances. The phrase "too cheap to meter" captured the expectation that electricity would essentially be free. This abundant energy would make previously impossible projects practical. Desalination plants would make deserts bloom. Indoor farming would eliminate hunger. Not all visions of the future were utopian. The Cold War cast shadows across tomorrow. Many predictions included the possibility of nuclear war and the bunkers where survivors would rebuild civilization. Science fiction explored dystopias alongside utopias, but the dominant cultural narrative was optimistic. Progress was inevitable. Technology would solve problems. Tomorrow would be better. What the 1960s got right and wrong about the future reveals the assumptions of that era. They correctly predicted the importance of computers, though they imagined them remaining large and centralized rather than becoming personal and portable. They predicted video calling, though not that it would come through devices in our pockets. They predicted global communications networks, though not the internet as it emerged. They missed the environmental movement that would reshape thinking about technology and progress. They missed the cultural shifts that would change family structures and work expectations. They assumed energy would be cheap and abundant forever. They assumed space exploration would continue at Apollo-era pace. The flying cars never came, not because the technology was impossible, but because the infrastructure and regulations made them impractical. The automated homes exist, but not in the dramatic form imagined. We have robot vacuums, not robot maids. We have smart speakers, not intelligent home computers running our lives. What defined the 1960s vision of the future was faith in progress. This was a generation that had seen radio, television, aviation, atomic power, and space travel emerge within living memory. Projecting that curve forward led to predictions that now seem naive, but at the time felt conservative. They were simply drawing a line from past to present and extending it. The future they imagined was sleek, efficient, and clean. It was a world where human problems were solved by human ingenuity, where technology served everyone equally, where progress meant universal improvement. That optimism may have been misplaced in its specifics, but its spirit captured something essential about mid-century America. For those who remember being promised that future, watching how differently things unfolded has been its own kind of journey. The year 2000 came and went without moon colonies or flying cars, but it brought wonders the 1960s never imagined. For those fascinated by how we dream of tomorrow, there is always more history to explore.